Everybody, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. Um, we are here and chatting with the CeraVe marketing team. So really excited to have a discussion with the whole team today. And we'll get started in just a second. But as you're joining, please know that the session is recorded. So if you have any issue with having your camera on, um, you can turn it off. But I like to see faces if you're okay having it on. And also, please keep yourself on mute. If you have any questions or anything that you want to ask, please put it in the chat. We'd be happy to get to all questions today. We're going to try to get to all questions today as much as possible. Um, so we're just going to give it another minute while we wait for a few more people to join in, and then we'll get started here. Um, While we're waiting for everybody to join in, I'd love for you to put in your major if you're currently studying, and also where you're located right now would be great. It's always fun to see kind of like where's everybody around the world right now who's joining in the call. So if you want to put in your chat your major and where you're studying or where you're at right now. International Business, Staten Island, okay. Chapel Hill, cool. Upstate New York. A lot coming in. UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina, NYC. Cool. Parsons. Great. Cool. All right. All over the States. I love it. Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, it's 7:03, so we're gonna, or it's, excuse me, 8:03, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Um, really happy to be having this chat, and I'll let each person introduce himself. But today we've got four people from the marketing team of CeraVe from L'Oréal. We've got Abigail, who's manager of global marketing and product innovation. Danielle, who's manager of global digital content, Isabel, who's the assistant manager of digital marketing innovation, and then Natasha, who's the assistant manager of global marketing. So the perfect team for you to ask tons of questions about marketing, about careers, about how to get into such a great big company and be successful within your career. So we're really excited to be able to have this chat today. Just quick brief introduction of who am I? I'm COO of Arpan Initiative. We're a global internship program for creatives, people who want to be within marketing, who want to be within, content, who want to be within social, within advertising, and we place over 1,000 interns to our program. So as part of our program, what we're doing is, of course, having chats with insider talks with people within the industry, and bringing to you some insider information from various different companies. And just a little breakdown of how today's chat is going to go. We're going to talk first about we're going to talk first with the marketing team here. And then we're going to give a little bit of introduction about Arbonne Initiative and what we do. And then we'll go to open Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout this, please put it in the chat, and I will try to get to as many questions as possible throughout this conversation, although I'm sure there will be more than I can get to. So I'll get to as much as possible. Cool. Let me just stop sharing screen here. And I'd love to start off first, maybe with some introductions. Maybe Abigail, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off, give me a little introduction of your role, what you do, and maybe a brief also overview of kind of how you got where you are, and then we can go through um, all four of you for that kind of kickoff.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you all. Um, so as mentioned, I'm a manager of marketing innovation at CeraVe. I started my original career journey fresh out of college, still within L'Oréal, but actually at L'Oréal Paris, where I held two roles kind of with our like junior management program that the company has that really funnels post grads, doing both product innovation, which is what I do now, but then also operational marketing, and then wanted some skincare expertise and experience. And so then I made the jump to CeraVe, where I've now held two positions. So that's kind of a little bit about me and my journey.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Maybe over to Danielle.
Hi everyone, I'm Danielle. I am the digital web content manager for CeraVe Global. So a little bit about how I got here first, then I'll tell you a bit about my role. So like Abby, I also started at L'Oréal fresh out of college. Honestly, I did not know what digital marketing really was when I was in college. I ended up doing an internship at DSW. I was just interested in retail in general. And I kind of talked to their team. I was really inspired by loyalty. I said, all right, that's where I want to go. So I started in the graduate program that L'Oreal like funnels you through. I did two rotations. So one was on Lancome, if you're familiar with that brand, and then I did another rotation on all of Lux, like so working across all of the different brands on their loyalty program, CRM, site analytics, that kind of thing. Then I moved over to our hair division, which we call PPD, Professional Products. And I worked on a smaller brand called L'Oreal Professional. Well, small in the US. If anyone's not from in the US right now, you might know it is a little bit bigger. But I worked there, still doing digital marketing, more focused on web, CRM, loyalty, etc. And then I made my jump over to CeraVe, where now I'm in more of a creative space and I work on our content. So I manage all content that you see on those product description pages on Amazon. So all of the shoots that go into that and the casting. I also manage TikTok Shop strategy for global, and I work on our overall festival assets for things like Black Friday, holiday, 11/11, Chinese New Year.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Great. And you've had a long journey with L'Oreal and also I'll definitely have some questions for you about content a little further down the
Yeah.
line. Isabel, how about yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm sorry, we're two in a room.
There we go. I think we
Can you guys hear me?
yeah, now I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, but
No problem.
anyways, my name is Isabel. I'm an assistant manager on the Hair Global Innovation and Global Marketing team. I also started my career at L'Oreal straight out of college, where I was a trainee on the Vichy local marketing side. So more so about taking these big activations and bringing it out, rolling it out to the local markets. Where now, so I kind of help create the overall vision, which is very, very exciting. And I was on CeraVe previously on the cleansing team, and I since moved over to the hair team a couple of months ago. So it's a brand new category. So if anybody wants to try it, please go out to the stores. It's really, really amazing. And then
Great.
I'll pass it off to Natasha here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Sorry
I
for
know.
the technical difficulties there. So my name's Natasha, and I went to Wake Forest University, if we have anybody from there as well. But I started my career at L'Oreal as an intern. So I was on L'Oreal Paris and Maybelline, working a bit of a mix of global and operational roles. And then I joined the CeraVe team a bit more recently, about 5 or 6 months ago. I had spent my first year and a half at the company in our management trainee program, as well in our fragrance division. So working on a global side of fragrance, and then now made the switch to skincare. So kind of two opposite sides of the spectrum, but it's been great on CeraVe so far.
Perfect. Great. Thanks so much for your introductions. I'm actually gonna start first question with you, Natasha, because or Isabel, because both of you have kind of more recently started your careers and also kicked it off with an internship within L'Oreal. So for everybody that's here on the call, that's in university or who's just about to graduate, what's maybe some advice that you'd have for them, if they're looking to get their career started at this stage, and something, if especially if they want to be getting into, a big global company like L'Oreal. Can go to either of you, Isabel or Natasha.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. So I honestly think that the best thing that you can do when applying to internships is be very persistent in your networking. And I find that I get a lot of like LinkedIn requests, for example, and I find that the people that I'm connecting with the most often are the ones that really follow up and really tell me a full story about themselves and why they're so passionate about the industry and why they're so passionate about the role you work in, as opposed to just like a hi, would love to connect. So I think like kind of putting yourself out there genuinely is the best thing you can do to get your foot in the door.
And you said being really persistent networking. I think networking for a lot of people can be overwhelming in terms of thinking like, I don't have a network yet. How do I build a network? I don't know anybody within the industry. So are there some places that they could maybe start from your perspective? Is it just cold outreaching to people on LinkedIn, or is it starting first with some people within their circle? Where do you usually find
Yes.
connections with people?
So I understand it's totally an unnatural and sometimes uncomfortable feeling, but I think the cold reaching out to is, at least for the college I went to, where there were very, very few people who worked at L'Oreal from my college. So it's like going on to L'Oreal and looking up, in my example, Boston College, you can see all the alumni there. And then when I kind of hit a roadblock there, it was going to my high school and searching up my high school and L'Oreal there. And then it will give you a list. And I kind of started at that point, and I was able to get my foot in the door with one person. And that allowed me to kind of have a domino effect where I connected with this first person. I asked her if she could refer me to other people. Then I connect with them, and then I connect with more people. So it's kind of just, again, being very, very persistent.
Yeah, I think that mirrors a lot of the advice that we always give too, which is that you don't need to have a network of 500 people. You need
Exactly.
you need two or three good people in your pocket who are going to champion you throughout your career. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't know who that person is going to be, which is why it's always really important to put your best foot forward, within every job, within every internship, and try to build that network within your, university too, because your faculty have a lot of connections as well. But you only need a couple people who are going to really champion you. That's going to totally make your career and pull you all the way through. So it's just about finding who that person is that feels really supportive of you and wants to invest their time into helping you. So building
Totally.
those connections kind of early and planting a few seeds that might pan out. I think Danielle, kind of moving to you because you've had a lot of different roles within L'Oreal and also, been able to navigate your career kind of moving through the company and also navigating, some changes within role. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what are some of the skills or what are some piece of advice that you have for people who are looking to like maybe stay with the company, and also how does that work? Like, do you go to HR and say, "Hey, I see this role is open and I'd like to apply for it," or is the team kind of pulling you through to different types of roles as they see your skills developing?
It's funny when you were saying like find a couple people who really believe in you and like will invest in you. Because so for me, when it comes to digital marketing, there's kind of I'm going to say two paths, but I'm sure there are more. Um, but they kind of break it down for you that you could be a specialist or a generalist. So a specialist might start off as like an intern of like website, and then move up to an assistant manager and then of website, and then a manager of website, and then all of a sudden you're the VP of website. So you've
Yeah.
super specialized in this thing, right?
Mm.
And then another path, which is the path that I'm kind of going after, is the digital generalist. A digital generalist is somebody who works on all of the different channels in digital so that eventually they could probably like run a digital team because they understand how all of those channels work together to create a full 360 activation. The reason I'm giving this context is because this has actually been a very difficult path to navigate, because every time I have jumped into a new role, I have to say, hey, I don't exactly have experience in this, but I'm very curious. Like, I truly believe that I can do this. Here's how I can do it. And it's kind of selling yourself every time, right?
Mm.
And when it comes to just one, like having a network of people that are willing to vouch for you, that is so important. Because if I see a role open and I just apply, even within my own internal portal, there's only so much HR can do for me.
Yeah.
But if one of my mentors is able to speak to the hiring manager and say, hey, I know this girl, I know Danielle, she does great work. Yeah, I know that she hasn't done ecom, I know that she hasn't done this, but I can speak to her character. I can speak to, I really believe she can do it. That has been really, really important. So that's one piece of it. And I would say the second piece is being able to sell yourself on your soft skills. the
Mm.
best way when you like I went to school for finance. I did not like have a marketing path. I was finance and psychology. I discovered marketing in my final year of school, and I've been doing this all the way through, where you have to constantly prove that you have transversal skills to do a job.
Mm.
And if you can find a way to really like sell your story and make it make sense and have someone that's interviewing you have that same confidence in you that you have, that you can do a job even if you don't have direct experience, that is my biggest piece of advice for just moving through a company in different roles.
That's a really good piece of advice. I think that a lot of the times what happens is that the hiring manager or whoever's interviewing you doesn't know necessarily what are the pieces that were involved in what you studied specifically, right? They may have studied marketing or they may have studied advertising. You come in and say, "Oh, I studied finance and psychology." And they're not going to immediately understand how that translates over, right? So you have to kind of tell the story for them, right? And
Yeah,
especially if you're getting into marketing, you need to be a good storyteller of your own story as well.
you should know how to market yourself.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like you have to be able to say, look, these are the things I learned. Like I've learned structure, I've learned organization, I've learned also like, you know, um, within psychology, like human behavior, right? So these are all things that are really applicable over to marketing. And the other piece that you mentioned, which I'm just going to say here because it's not specific
Yeah.
to your story, but I think is often not understood, is that there's a big difference between a hiring manager and HR, right? So
Yes.
you have to know the difference. HR is a function within a company that's there to help process the requests of the hiring manager. And they're going to do the best job that they can. But at the end of the day, the hiring manager, the person who's going to manage you once you're hired, is the decision maker, right? So, as much as you can do to get in front of them or to convince them of or have a network that's going to recommend you to them directly, you're going to help bypass a lot of the filters that HR is going to put in trying to seek the right candidate for that role.
I'll also put out, just because you mentioned that, and that is
Yeah,
actually such a key piece of advice. At the end of the day, the hiring manager is just like a person who is trying to find
yeah,
someone who's great to work under them. But everybody's different. So one thing that I did a lot, like as I continued to move through roles, is I'd find out who the hiring manager is, and then I'd ask everyone in my network within the company, "Do you know this person?" And that's actually how I got this role. I've reached out to a friend who was actually reporting into the hiring manager, and I said, "Hey, what do you know about this guy?" Like, and she said, "Oh, he's so visual. If you could put together a PowerPoint and show him the content you've created, you will stand out." And I did. I was the only one that did it. It really blew him away. A lot of people aren't like that, but I wouldn't have done it if I didn't know that about him. So
yeah, and
definitely using your network that way too.
yeah, and if you don't have a network with somebody, you can do that through LinkedIn. It's a great way for you to actually, you don't have to go to the top boss on LinkedIn and try to, message
Yeah.
them. What you can do is figure out like who would potentially be working under this person in the structure. Start messaging some people on LinkedIn and say like, hey, do you know who reports into this? Like, I'm trying to connect with them to understand because I'm applying for a job, and I'd like to learn a little bit more. And then eventually you might be able to grab a coffee or grab a Zoom meeting with that person and say, so connect with them on LinkedIn. And then by the time you go to apply, that manager is going to look at your LinkedIn and say, wait, they're connected with my employee. Let me ask my employee, what's up about them, right? So this gives you kind of an in and a bypass around some of those filters that happen when you cold apply. Abigail, since you've probably hired a few interns or a few staff members within your role, I assume, of course. So, could you tell me a little bit about what you're looking for, as people are applying? Like, how can somebody stand out, especially when they're applying cold, and they don't have the relationships? What are some things that you look for that help, applicants stand out from the sea of probably applications that you're receiving or filtering through?
So I can say two things. One is very much to Danielle's point on a hiring manager, and this is advice I received early in my career from HR about hiring managers, is that a hiring manager is really someone who's looking for someone they're going to work with every day under them. And so there really is that personal aspect to it. And I think in a sea of applicants, a lot of things can seem the same. The same jargon is whispered again and again. You hear evergreen, you hear innovation, and you want more of that personal edge. So I always think letting a bit of your personality shine through, whether that be in your cover letter, whether that be in a unique resume, is always really great. And hiring managers pick up on it and notice it. I would say the other thing, and this specifically really relates to L'Oreal and the type of people at L'Oreal, is passion. And what has always really driven me to a candidate is their passion about something. So what I mean by this is you don't have to come, say you're interviewing for a job in hair care. You don't have to come knowing everything about hair care. But if you come with one small, strong opinion about hair care, that will stick to someone, right? They'll say, oh, yes, the girl who was obsessed with conditioners and hated everything on the market. They'll remember that when they leave. And so that's kind of like my one tidbit and trick is just have one strong opinion and really nail it home, and then people will remember you by it.
That's really good. Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. It can, especially if you're applying for multiple jobs, it can feel overwhelming to figure out like, okay, how do I become an expert in this field, before I'm even a junior in the field, right? Like, and that's not going to happen, so you don't need to do that, right? You want to come in, but you want to come in caring. I always say that recruitment is a little bit like dating. Like you kind of want to put your best foot forward. You want to show that you're actually interested in that role. Even though you may be kind of on the market for a couple other roles, right? You want to make that person who's potentially hiring you feel like they're the special one and they're also the one that you're really caring about. And it's just about showcasing an interest and enough of an interest that you have done a bit of research and work beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to be filtered out with some of the batches of candidates that didn't quite make it to the next round. So Abigail, I'm going to stick on you for a moment. So can you tell us a little bit about how the marketing, I'm going to walk towards more of like inside the CeraVe marketing team. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the marketing team is structured globally and locally? How the different teams like DMI and product innovation and digital collaborate?
Yes, I can. I'll take a little bit of a step back, just for everyone who's maybe not as familiar with L'Oreal, but the way L'Oreal is structured is we have global teams. So that's where all of us on this call sit. So we're really high level, we stretch across the globe, and then there's also local teams. So that's where Isabel started her career on Vichy. I started my career on L'Oréal Paris, and that's when you really work for a country. So in our case, the United States, and you do kind of more of the day-to-day reactive marketing that some of you might be very familiar, which is like a TikTok with an influencer that's like being posted in real time or stuff you see at your local Walmart. However, our job is really more long-term. Our fruits of, we're all in like 2027, 2028, and we cascade all our work across the globe. So the kind of central force is more so the product team, because that's where everything starts. So that's where Isabel, Natasha, and I all sit. So that's really just focusing on developing new products. So a brand new item in our portfolio. And then Danielle's team, which is the digital team, sits next to us, and they take our new product and they turn it into everything you see on the web. And that's really their job. So that stretches all the way from where Danielle sits, which is like creative web strategy, all the way to like super big influencer campaigns that might span the globe. That team really led the Super Bowl ad with Michael Cera, which you all might be very familiar with. And then CeraVe is also super unique and super special because we have a really robust medical team and they support all of us. So we're developed with dermatologists. That team creates that relationship with dermatologists. They spearhead our medical studies, our clinical studies, and they're really what makes our brand, different from a regular mass consumer brand. So we kind of have three large pillars that work in tandem globally. And then, of course, we're supported then by local marketing teams who, give us feedback and they activate in real time on the ground across the globe.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really helpful. And how do you oversee, I guess, how do you oversee consistency between, what you're trying to do globally and then how you apply that to local markets?
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's a
would
very
love to
good
hear from
question.
you on that, and also you know, maybe some of your team who's worked on local markets as well can speak a little to that as well.
Yeah. I can say two things, and then Danielle's also a great champion of this consistency, so I might pass mic to her for a
Yeah.
bit. But so from a consistency perspective, from a product perspective, of course, our team controls what the actual product looks like. So we're able to control that consistency. And then, of course, we recommend parameters to market. So I'm actually releasing a lot of assets for a very exciting launch this week, and I have a very like 100-page suite of assets that is going out to the markets, and it's very prescriptive on, you know, these are the colors, these are the codes, don't do this, do that.
Mm.
But of course, I've worked on the local zone, and there is, you know, people get creative in their countries to do their best and to, you know, really tailor to their own market. So we don't control everything. We don't necessarily want to control everything because at the end of the day, I don't, you know, live in every country. I only live in the United States. So we have our perspective and our recommendation, but there are oftentimes those fine-tuned tweaks.
Mm. Great. That's really helpful. I think I you know I I can imagine that as you're trying to fit it into different markets that you don't, as you mentioned, you don't want to be too strict about the guidelines, right? Because it may not then apply well to different cultures or to different markets that you're trying to get into. Um, and maybe I'd love to talk a little bit about which campaigns you decide to develop and invest in, both thinking about um, which campaigns are going to be most successful within a particular channel, and then also how do you divide your time and energy across the different channels in which you're marketing. I'm not sure who's the best person to answer that question. Yeah.
That might be me.
Yeah. Sounds
Um,
good.
so I develop content for all of our web channels. So that's CRM, site, TikTok, Amazon. I think that's it. So I touch a little bit of everything. I think the only thing I don't touch is like paid media. So wait, I'm so sorry. Could you repeat the question?
I was just saying that how do you decide where to spend your time and energy on which campaigns and also on which channels? You mentioned also, that you have digital, that you work with dermatologists, to
Mhm.
recommend directly to other dermatologists, and also yeah, I mean, how do you decide where to put your energy, between
Yeah.
socials and yeah, other types of advertising forms?
Yeah, no, no, of course. So we have different members of the team that are dedicated to these different channels. I would say that honestly, one thing that is really important is just the we call it the star of the launch. Like, is it a 1 star, a 2 star, a 3 star?
Mhm.
And as you go up in star, so I guess that's how much like investment we want to put into this product and how much we expect it to come back with. That's how we really think about like which channels we're going to lean into. So for example, if something's a 1 star, we will say, okay, we're only going to create like a product description page for this. If it's a 2 star, we're going to give like a full asset suite, but maybe we won't do like this huge like commercial. But a 3 star, that's where we are going to invest in like a big campaign shoot. We're going to have like a commercial. We're throwing like everything and the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of it is really determined by like uh, what star we denote these launches to be. And a lot of that has to do with how relevant we think it's going to be to different markets. But honestly, the marketing team could speak more to how we determine stars, but that's how we determine the channel strategy.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I'd love to throw a question over to Natasha because I haven't gotten to you yet. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe one of the campaigns or one of or something that you've worked with in CeraVe and CeraVe, excuse me, and um, how your role has been incorporated into it. I'd love to kind of see from more of a perspective as we're looking at inside the team. We've talked about kind of global high level strategy, and then also, you have worked on, I believe, you've worked on local markets as well. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how your role has been involved in certain campaigns.
Yes, definitely. Also, sorry, I feel like my introduction got
Oh, no
frazzled.
problem.
Um, so I joined CeraVe about 6 months ago. I think it's interesting for me because I worked in fragrance on Ralph Lauren fragrances for about a year and a half before then, which fragrance is a different area, obviously, from skincare, but it's super campaign heavy when you're working on fragrance. It's a little off topic, but it's so much about like creating an emotion, creating a feeling, and creating like honestly an entire hero film about it. So I think having that adjustment from fragrance to skincare has been super interesting. That's something about L'Oreal that I also think is so exciting. You can really switch lanes and try different careers, try different métiers that you're interested in. But in terms of CeraVe, I'm working on the same team as Abigail as well right now. So we're about to release a super exciting campaign to all of our countries, which you all will hopefully see soon. But it's a very different experience, I would say, working in a fragrance campaign versus skincare. And I think that it's a lot about balancing the creativity and then specifically with skin, like the science and really staying true to our derm equity, staying true to what core claims we really want to push to have that trust in consumers that CeraVe really has with this medical backing. So I think within skincare, it's definitely a balance of like having this creativity, but then also like really staying rooted in science. And it's been interesting for me to see because I think coming from fragrance, it's such a different end of the spectrum where you're really just leaning into like that emotional, creative content storytelling. So all that to say that I think L'Oreal has a lot of different like paths that you can take in terms of your interest in that regards.
Great, great. And maybe any favorite campaigns that you all have worked on? I'm going to leave that one open.
Well, I will have to say I haven't worked on many campaigns. I've been more focused on the product innovation. But guys, seriously, this sun campaign that's about to come out is like the best thing I've ever seen. And I know that they put so much hard work into it. So I'm very excited for you guys to see it.
Cool. So something to look forward to in the future. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Danielle, how about yourself? If you were on the Michael Cera campaign, I'm sure that kind of ranks up there, but anything else that you've loved working on?
I actually joined 1 month after we launched Michael Cera,
Okay.
so that was rough. I wish I
You
could
could
have
have
been there
taken
for
credit. We wouldn't have known, you know.
I know, I really could have. You know what? The retro to take this out of the recording. That was my favorite. No, I would say that my favorite one that I worked on would probably be our hair care launch, just because it was going into a new category. I was randomly like very, very involved in that one. But it was really cool to just like be a part of the creative concepting and like we'd worked with like Charlie D'Amelio. It's like, how are we going to build hype about this? She was like, we gave her this like crossbody bag that was just like our cream on a string, and people were like going nuts for it. They're like, can we start selling this? We were like, overnight, like, do we just start producing our cream as a bag? And it was just like very exciting to kind of like concept something from the ground up and try to think of like how do we make like shampoo disruptive? How do we make people care about dandruff? And just being a part of that whole storytelling arc was really, really cool.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think one thing that has been really well, or seemingly really well balanced at CeraVe is the ability to balance like being relevant, being humorous, and being trusted at the same time, like medically,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think that's a really hard. I can imagine that's maybe now that it's existed in people's minds, it's there, but I can imagine that was a really hard thing to establish or to be able to continue to, you know, solidify is in how people are thinking about CeraVe.
Oh no, it's crazy because we have this conversation like this is we made up a word for it called medutainment. It's like medical entertainment. And we use that word like all the time in every meeting. It's like, but is this medutaining? Is it on brand? Is this funny enough? Are we doing this in a cool enough way? Is there like let's put a derm sleeve in it. Maybe if we just put a derm somehow. So yeah, it really does leak a lot into the branding, and it wasn't there originally, but it's now
Yeah,
something that we live and breathe.
yeah, it's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk briefly, and I'm gonna kind of wrap up my questions here in about 3 or 4 minutes because I want to get to everybody else's questions. I'd love to just touch really briefly on AI and digital trends, and maybe Danielle, this is a good one for you. Um, you know, First of all, how do you see it being implemented right now? To whatever degree you can speak about that. And then also, how do you recommend that students think about it as they're entering their career? Something that they should be afraid of, something that they should embrace? Like, how should they embrace it? What are your thoughts on it?
So an interesting part of my job is I do the photo shoots for our product description pages as we're coming up to a launch. And these can get really, really expensive. So we continue to try to find like cost savings. And one of the things we're exploring is how much of this can we do with AI and
Mm,
what is not okay to do with AI. So L'Oreal in general, our stance is we would never create people with AI,
mhm.
but we would do something like create a pack. So we are working with agencies right now to create assets that use the pack, and maybe it's like yummy textures, it's like interesting effects, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. That's what we're really leaning into. We just don't have the stance that you should be replicating a person with AI.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there, and honestly, it's a conversation that's a little bit bigger than me, and I
Yeah.
agree with it. But we are like looking for ways to just find efficiencies with AI. And a lot of that is coming down to when we look at content that's performing really well. So you think like a display ad or a TikTok shop ad, or even just textures and images like that, where we can find efficiency and using AI to take some of that burden off, where you don't have to have a whole set, you don't have to like rent a studio, and honestly it's not really hurting anyone. That's where we're leaning into it. I think that when it comes to putting AI on your resume and standing out, one thing is just being aware that this is something that is up and coming, that big companies are trying to learn the best way to move forward with it. But having any sort of experience like working with AI in image generation, or honestly, sometimes we even use it for copy, that sort of thing. But knowing how to prompt it properly to get what you want and be conscious and use it to find efficiencies, and problem solve, I would say that is the biggest way that you can present yourself as someone who knows AI in a useful way for corporate.
Interesting. And Abigail, do you see your team using it on product innovation side as well?
Yes. So L'Oreal has their own internal AI system that I think we all leverage. Of course, Danielle leverages it a lot more than us, but we have been leveraging it a lot as kind of a feedback loop. Of course, I think AI is best used to create speed, but not to like take workload. So we use it as a feedback loop, and it's like accelerating a lot of the ways we kind of simulate testing with consumers, which is fantastic. And then we also use it, for like image generation. That's life changing. But yeah, so we kind of incorporate it in some fine-tune ways, but it's really great in terms of accelerating that consumer testing and getting preliminary data.
Hmm. And now that you have these tools available to you, which are probably taking, like, which would probably a lot of that work might be handled by juniors in the past, right? Is like helping to speed up a lot of things, maybe not, but helping to speed up a lot of things, whether that's content or decks or, image generation or things of that sort. What are the types of skill sets or the types of things that you would expect juniors who are now coming in to have that might be different from 3 years ago in terms of, either soft skills or hard skills that they're coming in with?
I think that's a good question. It's interesting because, from my perspective, from 3 years ago, juniors are functioning largely in the same roles that they always have been. Maybe with AI, the level of it, you're just kind of expected to leverage it to improve your productivity. But of course, there's still a lot of human sides in our roles. Junior
Mm,
level roles can sometimes leverage AI. For example, to when I was a junior, I did a lot of data reporting, so like like sales data, and AI has like sped up those reports and also helped fine tune those reports and check for errors. But the report is still made by a junior, so I think it's really just a productivity standpoint. So the
mm,
new skill added to the list of skills that still stay is just leveraging the AI itself, but I don't necessarily think it's replacing any
right.
skills, at least not at the stage my team is yet with
Yeah.
the tools.
Well, I think that's a bit comforting to hear in some ways, and also it kind of reaffirms some of the things that we've been saying, which is, you don't need to be an expert in it, but you should understand how the different tools function, how to utilize them, and what are their limits of capability right now, right? Like,
hmm
where do you need to kind of step in, and you can't just trust it 100%. And when it comes to applying for roles, I think as well is like it's great to use AI, if you can showcase that you know how to utilize it, like if in a portfolio you want to showcase like this is how I improve something utilizing AI and this is the types of prompts I did. But if you're talking about yourself, if you're building out your resume, just write it yourself because I don't know about you, Abigail, but I see a lot of resumes that come through and you can see that it's generic and it just kind of makes you not really want to move forward with that person because you don't actually feel like you're getting to know them.
Mhm.
You want to get to know the person that's potentially working under your team and not the AI that wrote about the person that's going to work under your team. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you can use it to proofread and things like that, but you should still be speaking in your own voice. So I'm going to take a quick pause and I'm going to give the marketing team here a second if they would like to some water or something like that. Since been chatting a while, and I'm going to just talk about our Outbound Initiative for a moment and who we are, what we do. It's going to be very quick, and then I'll come back to everybody's questions. So while I'm presenting this, please fill up the chat with your questions. I'll start from the top of the questions that were posted. Now I won't get to all of them, but I will go through and look for some good relevant questions that we can get to. Let me just share my screen here. Perfect. So ARPAN Initiative, we've been around for about 10 years. We're a global career accelerator for creatives. So what that means for us is that we want to help students and recent graduates who are looking to get into the creative industries bridge that gap between what they've learned within the university and then how to get their foot in the door within a company. We focus on an internship component, but we're way more than just an internship placement. We have a lot of professional development, coaching, mentoring, network support, and travel support that's all included. And I'm going to get to all of those components in a second. But the goal here is that if you go through our program, you're going to feel completely supported all the way throughout that journey of getting an internship. And then post as well, you're going to feel like, okay, now I've got the skills that I have to be able to go and apply myself to different jobs. I have the network that I need. And I have also, the ABI team that I can lean back on to support if I need. We have 10 different destinations that you can do internships in. So within the US, New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, and Austin. If you want to go in Europe, London or Berlin, Melbourne or Sydney in Australia. And then if you don't have the opportunity to travel because you're still, doing it during your semester or, you can't afford to travel at that time, you can do a virtual internship as well, which is total possibility. We have 5 main categories for internship types. So marketing communications, I'm sure most of you on the call today are in this category. Communications, PR, marketing, advertising, strategy, could be social media management or content production. We also have design. I'm skipping around a little bit because I'm trying to keep it relevant to the call. We have design, so a lot of graphic design or branding or motion design or web design. Also, for those who are interested in entertainment and media, we have things in production or content production, post-production, and then also fine arts and fashion. So 5 main categories that you could do internships in. When you do an interview with us and after you apply, we'll be working with you to create a strategy. And what that means is picking a few of these internship types that are relevant to you and that we also feel confident we can get you an internship in. So it needs to be somewhat related to what you're studying or to your experience. But we're going to work with you after you apply on figuring out, okay, what's the right strategy and what are the right destinations that make sense for you. I mentioned that there are some program inclusions. There are 4 key program inclusions, which I'll go through each one briefly. We have the ABI Academy, a guaranteed internship placement, our creative network, and dedicated support. So within the ABI Academy, this is happening before the internship, and this is a preparation course that is meant to help you succeed both in the placement process for an internship and also in the internship itself. And it's a required component because we want to make sure that your profile is standing on its own merit and also that you're going to succeed well within the internship. So we're going to do profile preparation. That's resume, portfolio, interview skills, and recruitment prep. That's done together with some coaches that are working within the industry. For example, within marketing advertising, we work with Kevin, who's a creative director from Omnicom. And then within module 2, you're going to be preparing for the internship itself. So more coaching from our team and also external coaches and some content to watch as well. This is built for full-time students, so it's not something that's going to be overburdensome, but it's really the essentials that we've learned over placing 1,000 participants within internships of what you need to succeed. Some of our industry experts and advisors, we have Justin, who's a manager of finance strategy at Warner Bros., Jen, who's at MTV Paramount, Kevin, who I just mentioned, who's creative director at Omnicom, Michael, who's designer at Ralph Lauren, Vanessa is a senior recruiter for Quint, and she focuses specifically within creative industries, and then Jazz, who's a director of global social media marketing at Shutterstock. So some great coaches for you to learn from, and this is just a sample of some of the coaches that we work with. We do have a guaranteed internship placement, and the way that our guaranteed internship placement works is that we have 300 plus company partners worldwide, and that fluctuates over time depending on who's hiring and who's looking for roles across the different industries I mentioned. And we don't have any kind of reservation or any like paid relationship with our company partners. The way that we work is that we're an additional resource for them, and we want your profile to stand on its own strength. So we're working with you on really building a strong profile, and we believe in that so much that we're guaranteeing the internship placement. We're going to continue to share your profile out to company partners and seek new company partners when needed until you've received an offer. Internships can range from 3 to 6 months in duration. They can be part-time or full-time. You can do it for academic credit or experience. And one thing to note is that while we can guarantee an internship placement, we can't guarantee that it will be paid. We have about 30 to 40% of our internships are paid, but it depends on who's providing you an offer. And that's not something that we know at the early stages when you're entering into the program. We've worked with a lot of great big name companies, and we also work with a lot of small to medium sized agencies and firms who are great for you to get like hands-on experience and see across the team. A few of our company partners, we work with Reflex Group, a creative agency in New York, Factory PR, which is an ad agency out of LA and New York as well, Rock, which is a magazine and publication in Chicago, Raptor, a marketing agency in London, Studio Vanti, a creative agency. We've been working with them for a long time in Berlin, Milkman, another creative agency in Melbourne, and then we have Sydney and Virtual as well. So this is just a sample of a few of the company partners that we work with, but as I mentioned, it's over 300 and growing and changing every year as we continue to do that outreach and build new relationships. If you're traveling internationally, we handle the visa processing for you. So if you want to come into the States, or if you want to go, to the UK, or you want to go to Australia or Berlin, we handle the visa processing for you and insurance arrangements. And then you also have optional housing arrangements that are there. You don't have to utilize those. Those are third-party housing arrangements. And you can also find somewhere to stay if you'd like. You also have an in-city orientation. We have coordinators in each of the cities that we operate who's going to do an orientation. They're going to give you that information package and a guide to local creative scenes. And then from our team, you have total hands-on dedicated support throughout. So from the moment you join our program coordinators are going to be helping you with onboarding. They're going to be helping you with all the preparation of your materials through the ABI Academy that I mentioned. Our team is then going to do all that heavy lifting on the placement. So we're doing the back and forth with companies. Of course, you need to show up for interviews and respond to them over email, but we're doing most of the heavy lifting there and the travel support. And then when you land in the city, you have those in-city coordinators who are going to do events, emergency contact, and in-city orientation. And last but not least, you have our creative community. So this is important part because, as we mentioned, like you do want to find a few people that are going to be your network, and it doesn't have to be 1,000 people, but it should be 3 or 4 people that you feel are your network and can help further your career. The good thing about this program is we've had alumni who have gone through and are now in much more senior positions. So it's a great place for you to connect with other people and say, hey, I'm now going through the ABI program. I'd love to learn from you. I saw that you started your career out this same way. So you have access to our app that has all of our members there. And then, as I mentioned, we do events in all the cities that we operate. Some of our alumni have gone on to move, work for great places. And I think that this just speaks to the power of the network and, something that you can lean into later is trying to meet with some of these people or trying to connect with some of these people. We do have a tuition. We are like a course outside of your university that you're going to take that has the educational component and has a much more practical element of a placement and support all the way through. So we're like a course that gives you the education plus, so much more. So if you're doing it locally, if you're doing it virtually, our tuition is $2,250. And if you're doing it internationally, it's $3,250. And that includes the four components that I mentioned, but it doesn't include like visas, housing, flights, insurance, things that are third party and depending on where you're going. And we do offer a grant as well. So for students that are eligible for the grant or recent graduates who are eligible for the grant, this is for people who are in financial need, and it's between $500 up to the full program fee for our local or virtual programs. So you can definitely find more information about that on our webpage if that is applicable to you. And how to apply, a few steps. Number one is that you're going to go onto our homepage and check out the application form. Then we're gonna set you up for an interview, and we'll let you know the application result, and then you can decide whether you're choosing to move forward or not. An easy way to move forward also is just to go to our eligibility page, which we'll put in the chat. And on the eligibility page, you can fill out a short form, and then our team will get back to you to let you know whether you're eligible for the program based on your major, based on where you want to go. And then we're also going to set you up for a consultation call with our team. Okay, great. Our application deadline is coming up on November 10th. If you're looking to do something for next summer. So I know it's quite early, but we have a long process to get your profile prepared and make sure that everything is ready to go. November 10th is the upcoming deadline. There's no fee to apply, and it takes about 30 minutes to put your application in. So I recommend, if you're interested in applying, go ahead and put an application in, and then in the interview process, we'll go through your strategy. We'll talk about, where you want to go. We'll kind of lock everything in. So nothing is set in stone when you apply. If you're seeing the application form and trying to figure out like, okay, what are the things I pick in terms of destination, internship types. All right, and we do have one more talk coming up this week with Old Navy. So if you're interested in joining, Nigel, senior designer from Old Navy, will be chatting with us in a similar fashion. Yeah, I'm sure if you've signed up for this event, you've seen that on our page as well. Cool. So I'm going to stop sharing screen now, and thanks for hearing our little bit about our initiative. And now I'm going to get to kind of all the questions that you have for the team. And if you have any questions for us, happy to get to that as well. Let me see. I'm going to get to the top questions. Scroll down here. One moment. Sorry, from a hiring perspective, when everyone applying has a similar resume and experience, when you start to look at networking references, like who they know in the company. Sorry, I'm not understanding the question there, because maybe Osayemi, you can rephrase the question, would be helpful. I'm not understanding exactly what your question is. Sol asks, is it difficult or uncommon to switch industries while working in marketing, for example, cosmetics to F&B? I'm not sure who of the team would be the best person to answer that. Maybe Danielle, you've switched a lot in terms of different roles. So is it difficult to switch around in terms of roles and in terms of what your focus is within the company? And then also maybe your idea of, you've stuck within the company, but if you wanted to switch into different kind of categories or different industries, what's your feeling on that?
I would say it's always about finding some kind of like common thread and then just really building on that thread. So, for example, I don't work in social right now, but I run TikTok Shop. So if I wanted to go into an advocacy and social role, I would like really zone in on my learnings for TikTok Shop. And I think that that's really the way to like navigate. So if I were to try to leave the beauty industry, and let's say that I wanted to go into like consumer packaged goods, like food, I could probably not do that while also trying to get a whole different job within that field. But if I was going for a similar job, so something like web content focused, e-com, photo shoots, that sort of thing, because I have that common thread, I feel like they would overlook, like the gap is less. So I think that when I see people go into different industries, it's usually because they're staying within the same job.
Yeah.
And when they move around within the company, it's because they can find some sort of common thread going from even going to different divisions is a thing at L'Oreal. So there's about 50 different brands within L'Oreal. It's split into 4 different divisions. So it's hair, luxury, skincare, which is what we're all in, and then more mass consumers. So think like makeup, like drugstore brands, that sort of thing. And sometimes HR will have some pushback about you moving to a different division because you don't know that métier. But if I wanted to, let's say, go to luxury, but I wanted to go to Kiehl's, I could be like, oh, but I understand skincare. So I think it's all about like finding something that you can build on so that it doesn't seem like you're making so big of a jump.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like figuring out what the connection is, right? And where the thread ties together. And I think this is also true if you're looking to start your career.
Yeah.
I think a lot of students are anxious to get into their dream company right away or to start their career with their dream role. And while I can understand the kind of drive to want to get there quickly, you also need to be strategic in your moves, right? And know that you may
Good point.
just be a few steps too early, right? Like there you can start first, like if you studied something that's not 100% related, or even if you did, but you're not finding the role in the company that you want, you can start first by building towards it, right? In terms of the
Yeah.
experiences that you're having.
To
Um,
be super clear, when I started at this company, I was basically an analyst. That was the kind of digital work I was doing. And now
mhm.
I'm doing something super creative. And the way that I made like such a big jump across divisions and roles is just by finding those threads, even if they're fine threads.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, perfect. I think yeah, that's really good advice because it is like within an analyst position, you're not doing a lot of creative types of roles, but maybe it's very related to your experience within finance, right?
Yeah, I was looking at analytics that was content optimization for a site. So I was like, oh, like I know what good content looks like because I know the analytics behind it. I did an SMS analysis, so I know like what content different consumers like. So who better to create the content than someone who understands the insight behind it? It's all about like making a story that makes sense for why you should be in a role, and that like what makes sense is going to be different depending on what your starting point is. You just kind of have to roll with what you got.
Yeah, cool. Isabel, I thank you. Isabel, I'd like to throw a question to you. So what tools or skill sets should younger generation, prioritize in order to succeed in marketing industry, especially within the beauty industry? Um,
Yeah,
that's
so I actually think this builds off of Danielle's a little bit. I feel like, I mean, other people will think I sound like a broken record, but I really, really believe in starting out and really understanding the market. And how do you figure that out? It's through data and like taking these analytical roles. I mean, Abby was essentially a BA in her first role, and I think that's why she's also so successful as what she does at what she does. It's because she understands the market shifts, and when like something is trending down, she's able to quickly gather insights and look in the right places to understand, okay, well, why is this product like in decline? Like what is driving the overall market? So I think that honestly, really fleshing out those skills is what is it's the most important thing you can do, especially if you look at senior leadership. They all have the skill really, really like well built out. So that is something I would prioritize early on in your career because it is harder to
Mhm.
learn the older you get.
Mm. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Especially entering into marketing, careers specifically, I'm sure that's becomes a increased importance. Um, Natasha, how do you get employers to notice your resume, especially when applying to beauty companies? When you were applying from Wake Forest, like what were some of the tricks that you utilized in order to get them to notice your resume?
Yeah, honestly, I think resumes are tricky because I think it's difficult to how ownable you can really make a resume feel or like how unique you can make them feel. I think what really stood out to me when I was applying to internships was, as Isabel, I feel like really pushed networking was most important, I found. And I think, quite frankly, that being able to speak to your experiences in an ownable way and like show your personality through those conversations and networking is what really makes the impact. And I mean, obviously, I think it's super important to update the resume and everything, but I think what I really focused on was meeting people and reaching out and like continuing those connections.
Mm,
Because I do feel like cover letters and resumes, like it can be easy to be caught in like the I don't know, this swarm of all of them that are submitted. So I think like making those in-person connections are more important in a sense.
Yeah, okay. So trying as much as possible to build some network so that
Yeah.
it's not just the resume that has to stand on its own, right? Yeah, and from our, surveys to companies, we've seen that, only about 30% of jobs are being filled through cold applications, through LinkedIn and through application pages. Most are being filled, 60% are being filled through referral, and that could come internal referrals within a company. It could come external, somebody knows somebody and is passing through. And that's only natural because people want to, have like it's normal to trust somebody that somebody else has told you to trust rather than to trust somebody who comes to you cold, right? So that's very normal in the way that people would approach things or a hiring manager would approach things. So any kind of connection that you can build, any way that you can at least have some face time or at least have some connection online with somebody who's within that team is going to heavily increase your chances of um, of getting a role, and then be persistent, right? Because even your chances might heavily be increased and it might move from, 0.5% to 5%, right? So like you still need to think that like I need to be persistent and I need to, figure out different multiple potential routes in. Um, so I guess for Abigail, how does L'Oréal and CeraVe approach working with international talent within the marketing teams, and how cultural diversity contributes to team collaboration and creativity? I know you're working on, global product innovation, and so I think thinking about how you're working with global teams, I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a little bit. Well, one thing I want to add to something Isabel said, and then I'll answer the question,
Yeah.
is if any of you are still in college and your college offers a data visualization course, please, please, please take it. Marketing is a lot of storytelling, and if you can tell that story with data, you're kind of golden. Okay, so then I'll move on. But
Perfect.
so the other thing I would say is we have a lot of international talent both on our team and then also stretched across the globe. Kind of to my point earlier, is we are based in the US. However, our products are sold all over the world. So actually, there's been a bit of a push to really continually hire more non-US talent. So we have some junior talent, an employee we just welcomed who was an intern and then he got hired full time, who actually was raised in Brazil. And a big part of his hiring was not just his talent, but also his global outlook. We're also a French company, so we of course have a lot of expats from France, but all over Europe. So I think the company really values the global perspective because we are a global company. And so we understand that a team of just one perspective, one gender, one identity, one whatever is not going to create content or products that are loved by all. So it's definitely something that we are mindful of. And then I'd say like cross-functionally, we do look to have partners across the globe. I know Daniel's team has like small little scrappy teams that exist in other countries that we leverage a lot. And then we always try to rely on our partners who are like boots on the ground and really foster relationships with them. So to Isabel's point earlier, if something's declining in France, I know someone in France on CeraVe who I can just speak to directly and say, listen, like, can you tell me about this? So we try to manage those relationships. But as a company, I think diversity, both of like internationality, but of all kinds, is really appreciated and definitely celebrated. And we try to foster that kind of talent.
Yeah, cool. And especially I'm sure as you're working in campaigns that are international and going to different places, right? Like you need those different perspectives in order to create really relevant campaigns.
Of
Um,
course.
Bella asked in terms of, and I think we've kind of answered this one, so I'll just keep this one short, but in terms of internships, do cosmetic companies only want internship experience in other cosmetic companies, or more wide range of business internship experience acceptable?
I can take this quickly. I'll say like both work. It's kind of a similar metaphor to law school, right? Like law schools, they love a paralegal, but they also love someone who did the Peace Corps or someone who might have worked at JP Morgan, not to name a company. But we have a lot of people on our team who, for example, I started in the public sector working in politics my whole undergrad and then switched really late my senior year to want to pursue marketing. And I think those skills have really done a great job. We have other people whose backgrounds are, in medical or are in engineering. And so either way, it can't hurt you. If you're super passionate about beauty and you have a beauty internship, that's great. If you have an internship in tech, if you have an internship anywhere, as long as, to Danielle's point, you can tie the thread about what that taught you, that's then going to help you succeed at L'Oréal. It really doesn't matter. And all is quite welcome. And honestly, I think HR is constantly asking us, like, where should we recruit? What backgrounds should we recruit? And we're always telling them to just keep looking for like unexpected backgrounds and people just with passion. So it's really just about tying that thread. And if your whole college career if you were like me in your whole college career, you thought, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, and you worked in campaigns, that doesn't hurt you. Just find the thread. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it even goes far to say is like sometimes you can use it like to your advantage. Like you could say, oh, like well, you wouldn't say this, but it's almost like, oh, there's like 30 people who are applying who have beauty experience, but I have experience in consumer packaged goods or tech or da da da. And here's why that makes me different. Here's what that taught me that I could bring to L'Oreal. That's like a lot of the ways that I've like found my in, where it's like, here's why being different is good.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think also from the hiring manager's perspective, sometimes they're looking at, or the HR's perspective, right? They're looking at hundreds of resumes and trying to filter out, who's potentially right for this role. And so the reason why experience within a particular sector that's relevant sometimes works well is because it's just easier to pass the filter. It's like, okay, this makes sense. They worked at this company, like then I'm going to kind of pass them through. Um, but but if you can figure out a way to tell that narrative otherwise, and why it ties together on the resume or in your cover letter, then you have a chance to stand out there. So Naoki asked, and I think Danielle, this will be for you. I'm going to use half the question. How do different brands go about selecting new ambassadors?
So remember how I talked about like medutainment and how this is a word that we made up and we hold it near and dear to our hearts and we use it in like every meeting. Different brands have different like styles of branding. So when it comes to picking an ambassador or even picking someone to represent you in a campaign, it really comes down to do they represent the brand? So we might not pick somebody who comes off like a celebrity who comes off very like luxury and like a little more away. Like, no, we want someone relatable and funny and maybe who's talked about skin issues before. So the way that we really do make that selection is based on how much they align with the brand tone of voice and our brand values and what we're pushing in that moment.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's so just like having maybe a core identity first, right? And then figuring out from that identity, like who kind of fits the puzzle there.
Yeah, definitely.
And then what's going to work well for that particular campaign. That's interesting. In an industry saturated with skincare content, how does CeraVe stay innovative and avoid drowning in the noise, especially when trends change daily? So are you following trends, chasing trends? Are you creating trends? Like, are you staying core and like steady? How does that work? I think that question is probably going to go to you, Danielle, but but can go to anybody. Yeah, since you're working on the digital side.
Yeah. So I would say that there is this interesting, so we actually had a meeting about this recently, how influencer isn't what it used to be. It's kind of a red sea compared to what it might have been a couple of years ago, right? So how do you tap into social without just being another brand? So a lot of it comes down to like one of the things that we look at a lot is being a part of a conversation that already exists rather than trying to make our own conversation. So we'll hop onto a trend, but how do we make it CeraVe? Is this the right trend for us to hop onto? And I think that a lot of it, when it comes to trying to be different from other brands, something we talk about a lot is you wouldn't hand an influencer something and be like, okay, just make a video, read the script. No. If you are an influencer and you don't make anything skincare related and your whole thing is you like make DJ mixtapes, like da da da, we're like, great, no brief. Here's our product. Go ahead and make content. And that's how we get the best like out of our influencers. We actually have a whole name for this method, but basically it's about like bringing out influencer authenticity and being a part of conversations and not just jumping on a trend because it's a trend, but making it our own by really amplifying the voice of our influencer and their style.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Very interesting. I think, sorry, I'm reading through some of the questions at the same time. What does, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm trying to get through just a few more. Um, I think some of these we've already talked about, so I'm looking for something that might be a little bit different here. Uh, um, I think this one's interesting, and I'm not sure who it will go to, but what does the creative process look like internally for each individual that's working on the team? And how do you look for inspiration for each, particular assignment that you have? It's very broad, but I'm gonna leave that one to you.
Marketing, do you want to go from a product innovation standpoint? I'm always really interested how you guys like come up with the new products.
I can take it away. I don't know if Abigail is going to speak there. I think it is very role dependent to your point. From a marketing innovation side, so I worked with Abigail on the same team. I think a lot of it is looking many years in advance of what we will think the trends will be within skincare, within our specific segment of skincare as well. So a lot of it is really seeing like what's working right now, what's trending right now, but beyond that, what do we think will actually stick and what will lead to like more long-term growth. And so I think it's balancing like the trends of the moment with also launching something that will be able to maintain like long-term success and not just phase out with different fads at the time, from a product and innovation perspective. And I know Danielle, you probably have a different point of view from digital as well.
So for us, and I know this is something that you had touched on, Ben, but it's like we're creating content for global and it has to be globally relevant. So sometimes you have to like pull on a thread that exists for the whole world, which is really hard to think about, honestly. Like we had done this campaign that was a soap opera for our like cleansers, because get it, haha, like a soap opera, whatever. And the reason that we leaned into that is because when you look at different cultures, like there's K-dramas, there's no telenovelas, there's like Bollywood, like so finding like these common threads that exist throughout the world, right? So when we think about like starting a campaign, it is one, finding something that is globally relevant and really thinking like, okay, if I spend a ton of money and effort and time into this, are the markets actually going to use it? Or are they just going to be like, ah, that US DMI, they don't understand our country and they're just giving us things that don't matter. So we really have to start there. And then from there, we'll usually kind of, it's almost like we're campaigning it. We're like testing it out. We're like reaching out to our big markets. Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Like we're showing them work in progress. And then as we get more of those yeses, we continue to flesh out the idea. But truly it starts from like trying to find a global thread, making it creatively linked to whatever it is that we're selling or whatever we're trying to push, and then getting market alignment to make sure that this is relevant and that we are like being conscious of global needs.
Cool. Great. Thank you both so much for the answers on that. And it's 9:14, so I'm gonna wrap things up. We had until 9:15. I really appreciate all of your time, for coming in, Abigail, Danielle, Natasha, and Isabel. Like this has been really fantastic to hear from you. And I think also what's really important is to kind of demystify the process for a lot of students, like what is it actually like to work within a company like that, and how do you actually get to that level? So this has been really helpful advice. I think a few takeaways overall are, besides the things that are specific to CeraVe, is, making sure that as you're thinking about your network, you try to build some network connections through LinkedIn or through the connections that you have of faculty or other family friends or things of that sort. And then, leaning into how to tie the threads between what you currently know and where you're trying to get to. And it may be a few jumps to get there, right? You don't want to like skip from one thing all the way to another total industry without having any thread tied. You'll just find yourself hitting roadblocks, right? So figuring out like what are some courses that you can take now if you're interested in this particular field, and what are the things that you can leverage to be able to get your foot in the door, and get at least into a company. And maybe you might want to look for a role that is the most relevant to what you've studied, so that you can get, like you did, Danielle, and then figuring out how to navigate your way through the company over time to a role that is more aligned with you. your desires. So I really appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave also, my LinkedIn here for anybody that would like to connect. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I just dropped it in the chat. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all questions. There's a lot of good questions, but I appreciate everybody. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Abigail, Natasha, and Isabel.
Thank you guys. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.